welcome first off to everyone from all over the place, it looks like. My name is Zach. I am a business education coordinator over at PushPress. If you have not met me in this role, you may know me from the CrossFit seminar staff. I teach level ones and level twos. I've been doing that for over a decade now and have recently moved into this role with PushPress. Super excited to be able to push some great content, some great information out to our clients and maybe potential clients or anybody that is in the gym ownership space that needs to learn about the nuances of running a business or running a successful boutique gym. And today we are going to discuss a relatively hot topic in the industry right now as the tech develops. A lot of platforms have come out with a feature, I'll say, that allows gym owners to pass on processing fees, credit card processing fees to the end user, to the customer, to the member. And it's a hot topic because we typically have either confusion or discussion going back and forth on whether or not this is, I hate to use the word ethical because that's really strong, not ethical, but seen as a best practice. So we've gathered the best and brightest, and let me introduce the people that are going to be talking about this with me today. First, we'll start with Aimee Moller. Is it Moller?
Moller.
Aimee, did I say your last name? Moller? Yeah, correctly, from Swift River CrossFit, which little fun fact is in Conway, New Hampshire, which is the town that I grew up in. And I am super excited to have you on here, Aimee. Thank you for spending your Wednesday morning doing this with us. And then we also have Chris Williams from CFT Fitness. Chris, you have you have multiple locations, is that true?
I have two different gyms in the same building, so different locations by address, but same building.
That's a relatively unique setup right there. And like I said, it's great to have you here. Looking forward to you two sharing your expertise and your perspective on this topic. And then my partners in crime, Michelle and Greg from the Success team. Super excited to have you guys here so you can give us some insight as to what we are seeing from customer feedback and client feedback from PushPress and how the team feels about the feature set in general. So the first thing I want to talk about, or the first thing that I would kick off with is understanding what this feature does, not necessarily specific to PushPress, but maybe most platforms that are going to be offering it. And I'm not going to go on like a tangent and talk about what competitor A, competitor B, or other software platforms are specifically offering. But essentially, what you'll notice is that some platforms are putting out a toggle that allows you to set a certain percentage on all transactions that go through your system. And depending on the system, they may allow you to determine the percentage, or it may be a predetermined percentage to match your specific credit card processing rate. So, for example, in PushPress, and Greg, do me a favor, Michelle, do me a favor. If I misspeak, just feel free to correct me. In PushPress, there will be a toggle that will allow you to set upwards of 10% that you can apply as a, and do you guys remember how it's labeled? It's not labeled as a surcharge. Do you remember the exact verbiage? It's gonna appear as a second
Processing
line
fee.
item.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be you might actually have the choice to change the verbiage. And then, of course, that's going to be different depending on the system. But it's going to be a second line item in addition to the membership charge. And you could actually also turn this on. Adam answered the question in the chat. You guys, what did he say? You can choose from a couple different categories of what is displayed, but you'll also be able to set that charge so that it applies across any type of retail transaction, service-based transaction, and as a result, recoup the expense, the cost of goods sold expense that you would otherwise incur from charging members by using a credit card. And you will also be able to do on some systems the same thing for ACH charges. So that's interesting to note as well. Now, to set the stage, I use the term cost of goods sold because that's personally how I've always viewed the fee. Aimee, is that when you guys look at your accounting, Aimee, is that how you classify your processing fees in like the chart of accounts? That's how I always classified it, was a cost of goods sold.
No, our accountant has it set up as processing fees, and there's some journaling weird stuff that I have to do too.
Yeah. Does anybody else have it set up as a weird chart of accounts so they can keep it separate from their expense fees or anything like that? No, it's just line item. Yeah. So I typically had it a little bit separate because I always knew that it was going to be a set percentage of credit card transactions. Just helped me keep a little bit more visibility on it. I would love to start with Aimee. Aimee, you are for passing the processing fee on to the customer, correct?
Yes.
Perfect. Can you give me some insight as to why you decide to go to make that decision, or what points in your mind were the pillars of the decision-making process?
I mean, the big pillar of the decision making was monthly. I'm seeing this line item of processing fees for our credit cards and realizing how much money I'm leaving on the table. And at the time that we made the change, I really wanted to give my coaches a pay raise. And I realized, hey, if I can cut this in half, that's my pay raise that can go to my coaches. I'd rather give that money to them than to give it to the credit card companies. But at the same time, I didn't want to, we switched to ACH at the same time. So I wanted to incentivize people going to ACH versus people going to credit card. So that's part of the reason we passed along the fees. But I wanted that flexibility. I didn't want our members to be forced to go in either direction, because I've been a member of a gym where everybody had to pay by ACH. Personally, I didn't like it as a member because I'd rather have control over when I have to pay those fees. So it was really important for me for there to be a choice. And then at the same time, like all my local coffee shops had these little signs that said, if you pay with a credit card, it's a 4% fee on top of whatever you're going to be paying. So locally, it made sense to me because everybody was seeing that everywhere. And I think people started to understand that it does cost small businesses more. And that's where everything came out of for us.
That's pretty powerful points that you mentioned there. One, the market, the local market that you were operating in, that your clients and your customers were already involved in, obviously, they were probably seeing it happen more often. And now that's the social effect of consensus, is when a lot of people agree to one thing, it kind of makes it seem like, yep, this is the new norm, right? So that makes a ton of sense. I love the fact that you said you didn't want to basically pigeonhole your customers into doing it. You wanted to give them an option. And it was also underpinned by the fact that you were trying to drive more people to ACH. So you had a definite plan. It wasn't like, oh, this is just going to allow me to save money, so I'm going to do it. You definitely gave it some thought. That's pretty awesome. I love that. Chris, you were also pro passing the processing
Yeah.
fee. Like, you're for it. And you've already done this in your
Yeah.
businesses.
Yeah.
Cool. Can you explain what your thought process was going into this and why you decided to do it?
Yeah. So in 2018, we actually did this for the first time with another company. And back then they didn't have a pass, a flex option. So we just created two different memberships, and for the same reason. Um, I think if you give people choices, you're not going to get pushback. Most people that use a credit card aren't doing it because they can't afford your service. They're doing it for the benefits the credit card provides to them, whether it's points, it's business, you know, miles, whatever it is. Like, there's a benefit to using a credit card above and beyond, oh, I can't afford this out of my bank account. And the people that would
Hmm.
prefer to save a few bucks obviously can afford to pay out of their bank account and don't have a problem changing to ACH. So for us, it was a pretty simple process of just being really transparent about why we were doing it. That it was, we didn't tell them how much, but it saves us well over $1,000 a month. That we can put towards our staff, we can put towards development, we can put towards fun equipment that maybe isn't necessarily needed. But again, when you have that little chunk of change, you can do something with it. So for us, we just made it very clear and transparent. And again, like Aimee said, it's a lot of social. There's a lot of social stuff to it too, right? People are kind of used to it now, right? As James pointed out, you go to Hawaii. You're going to pay a surcharge everywhere you go. Pretty much any travel at destination, you go to any liquor store or gas station in our town of Tracy, you're going to pay a surcharge. Like there's a sticker on it everywhere. So I think people are pretty conditioned to the idea that this is happening. So we didn't really get any pushback from it.
Yeah, we got zero pushback as well.
You got zero pushback.
Zero. I mean, we gave them the choice. You can go ACH for no additional fee, or if you want to use your credit card, you can pay the fee. There was zero pushback.
We gave a pretty decent amount of lead time. I think we gave 45 or 60 days. Katie can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was like we gave them like a solid 45 days to switch. And ACH now versus 2018 is so simple to do with Stripe.
I do remember last time I did anything with ACH, it's been years, but it was always, actually, I think it was setting up my mortgage. Now that I think about it, I can't remember, but it's always been a pain, and that's always been the reason to not do it. Yeah. Cool. Good perspectives from both Aimee and Chris on that as to why they decided to go down the path of passing the fees. Greg, can I have you speak to the opposite? I think you might be on the other side of the fence and have some reasons as to why it may not be the best decision.
Yeah, 100%. I think first and foremost, obviously, every gym owner needs to make the decision that is relevant and important and fits their community and their business always. I personally have chosen and will continue to choose to not pass on fees to my members. And really, more than anything, there's kind of an ongoing joke here in the PushPress space. The success team is kind of the vibes team. We very much like to see where the vibe is, run on the vibes, whether that's from our clients or personally as a team. And really, at the end of the day, I do think the decision of passing on the processing fees to your members can be a big, quote, vibe killer. Main reason being is being customer value driven as a gym owner, which all of us are. And I do feel that people do see of passing on the fee is not an added value to them from the business. If you do position it correctly, as I think Aimee and Chris both have, in terms of, we're taking in this extra money to put into and invest into our gym, I think that's super important. However, I do think if we look in the overall space, whether it's gyms or outside of that, when we do see those breakdowns of processing fees, whether it's a Grubhub, an Uber, an Airbnb, people are very turned off by the idea of passing a fee, especially if it isn't necessarily outlined, which can be hard to outline. So for example, let's say at my gym, roughly a membership costs $150 a month. They're coming in thinking I'm paying $150 a month. And then I also say, oh, also there's going to be a $10 processing fee, which could be advertised and kind of, worked around 100%. I do think that can turn some people off. And also at the end of the day, what we have seen in a few instances is with gym owners passing on these fees, maybe in areas where we aren't seeing fee pass-through being as prevalent as we see out by Chris and by Aimee, we are seeing more pushback from members. So me personally, I would be more in the camp of, let me build this processing fee rate into my membership at my next membership price raise. If I need to recoup, say, $5, $10 a month for those members, I'm going to work that into my next membership price raise. I think I can better project, hey, this is where this value is coming from, where it's going to go to, versus, yeah, credit cards cost us a lot of money, so we're going to make you take that hit. In in essence, it is essentially the same thing. I think just framed slightly differently.
Absolutely. That's actually a phenomenal point. I'd love to revisit back with Aimee and Chris on this, because this is a roundtable discussion. If you guys are okay with the question, why did you decide to pass the processing fee instead of raising your rates? Aimee, can I have you answer that question first?
Yeah, absolutely. At the time that we did it, I wasn't considering raising my rates. We actually did do a rate increase maybe like 4 months after we did the processing fee thing. And it was such a small amount that it didn't make sense to me to do it as an overall rate increase. So
Okay,
if you
that's
are planning
a fair
on doing
point. Yeah,
a rate increase anyway, it might make sense to incorporate that into the rate increase. But if you're not planning on doing a rate increase, then I think you could definitely do it the way we did, where people have the choice.
phenomenal point. Chris, what about you?
So yeah, we did both in the same year. We did a price increase and the credit card fee pass on in 2022, I'm pretty sure it was. And what we found was, yeah, we could raise rates, but then you're just paying a bigger credit card fee. So, you got to factor it in either way. So why not be upfront, transparent about what the price increase is for, and then at the same time be transparent about why you're giving them a choice? I think the way this gets negative is if you're not giving them a choice. If you're telling them we're only taking credit cards and we're passing on the fee, and there's no way to get around that. Whereas when you bring in ACH as an option, you're now telling them it is 100% fine for you to pay this way and not absorb a fee. Right? So if you want
Yep.
that benefit of your credit card and the points, which most people told us, I'm going to keep my credit card because the points are more valuable than the fee. Right? Fine. Maybe that's their business is paying for it. Maybe they travel a lot for work and they need the miles. Whatever it is, I think the choice is what makes this really palatable for most people.
Absolutely. That's interesting. Do you, just real quick as an aside, do you guys let customers pay their membership in cash?
No.
So one of you does, one of you doesn't. I was just curious.
Cash is king. I don't care.
Cash is king. I love that. Very cool. So we've had some great points on both sides of the fence. Like obviously Aimee and Chris, it's working for you guys, and you had a thought out decision-making process of why and when to implement this. Greg, you gave some great supporting points on why it may be a negative impact on a given business, or especially inappropriate in a given area where passing on processing fees is not very prevalent, maybe yet. That's phenomenal. Michelle, can you do me a favor? You've been ear to the ground, finger on the pulse, so to speak, with PushPress clients and the gym industry in general. Can you give me some insight as to the reaction from the end user that we're seeing? Are customers giving pushback on regular to the gym owners? Are we hearing that? Are we feeling that? Do you have any insight on that?
I think the answer is it depends, right? I think, the feedback that Aimee and Chris gave is sort of in line with what we hear. There's some places where the feedback or the pushback seems to be more than others. And there's others where people don't even seem to bat an eye. I think the bigger theme that has really kind of bubbled up to the surface when I either talk to other gym owners or have kind of done my own research on where we stand in the industry with it is caution. It's kind of like the buzzword, right? Because I think on the gym owner side, there's this feeling of, that money could be used for something. I think 9 times out of 10, most of us owners are like, well, gee, I could probably use that for, as Aimee mentioned, paying her staff more, or maybe it's getting additional equipment, whatever the case might be. I think one of the biggest differentiators about our industry and what, some of the things we've mentioned here that I've also heard from owners is that we are not a transaction-based space. It's relationship-based. And so it's a little bit different when you walk into a coffee shop and you are handed, your Starbucks, and there is that understanding of, this fee just comes along with it. I have my coffee and I'm walking out and on my way for the day. In terms of what we do, there is an intangible quality to it. It's person to person, a little bit of delayed gratification, right? These people are coming to you for a service that they don't necessarily walk out with in their hands. They come to you, you put them through a workout, you give them guidance, you teach them some things, but in some cases, it's also going to take a little bit of time for them to see the results of the service that they're paying you for. So I think that the member, for them to digest, oh, so there's also, like, aren't I already paying you for
Right.
the service that you're providing? I think that is one of the things that also has come up a lot, is just that the tone of what we do is a little bit different than a gas station, a Starbucks, something like that.
That makes total sense. And it kind of alludes to what Greg was saying earlier. It's the vibe check and the feel that we get. We definitely don't ever want our members to feel like we're nickel and diming them, right? Can we talk for a split second about the tipping outrage that I'm going through when I go in and get a Starbucks? I'm like looking at it as a fee now. It's like, cool, the advertised price of a Starbucks cup of coffee is $4 or whatever. That's going to cost me $6 just because I know the tax and then the tip on top of that. Oh God, I hope my members don't feel like that if I'm charging, if I'm passing the fee. That is the most frustrating. Very cool. Great stuff, Michelle. I love hearing that. And as I expected, it's a mixed bag. Yeah, it depends on what seems to be common here. And you guys, let me know if you agree. What seems to be common is it needs to be appropriate for the gym, and it really comes down to how you're implementing it. Less so, are you or are you not doing it? If you are going to do it, how do you communicate that you're going to do it, and how do you launch into it? That seems to be the pivoting, like the fulcrum of whether or not this is providing benefit to the gym or net negative. Real quick before, because I'm going to ask Aimee and Chris some more questions, just if you guys are on the call, we do have a Q&A. So if you have any specific questions, I see the chat's blowing up with some great conversation, but if you have any specific questions that you would like us to address, submit them to the Q&A and Michelle will make sure that they get passed on. And we're going to have a 10 to 15 minute session at the end just to address any of the questions that you guys have. Aimee, going back to that, could you elucidate? Is that the word that I'm looking for? Illuminate? I'm trying to use bigger words, guys. I'm trying to expand my vernacular. Could you tell us some of the main points that you went through when implementing this change in your business? Like, if you were to advise a gym owner on, like, hey, all right, you've made the decision to pass the processing fee. These are the things that I think you need to do in order to be successful, make sure that it is a net positive for your gym. What were some like 2 or 3 main points that you would talk through?
Number one would be absolutely give them the choice if they want to do ACH with no fee or do the credit card. Or if you're going to do the fee with ACH, also let know up front what the fees are, because they are different. I think at the time when we did it, ACH was like 0.9 or maybe 1.1 or something like that. And credit card was 2.97, I want to say.
It's significantly cheaper to do ACH, right?
Yeah. So we chose not to do an additional fee for ACH. And that was the big one. And then number two, kind of similar to doing a price increase, the notice needs to just be really short, in my opinion. Not emotional, not a really super long explanation about why you're doing it. And I think people understand that now because it's happening at lots of different places. But we kept it brief. We left the door open for people to get back to us with questions or concerns or any hardships. And there was really nothing. I mean, some people, when they got the link through PushPress to make the bank connection, were like, oh, I'm really not comfortable with this. And it was a lot of our older members. They didn't want to put their banking information into the connection. So you have the flexibility of doing it on your end for them. It takes a little longer, but I think those are the 2 big ones. Just keep it really simple and positive and give them some choice in the options.
Perfect. Simple, Short, simple, positive. It sounds like coaching cues, to be honest. Hey, be specific, be short, be actionable, right? Always be positive. Don't tell them what they're doing wrong. Tell them what you want them to do. Cool. So interesting. So short and simple and positive, and then offer flexibility, offer options.
Yeah. The other thing I
Cool.
would say, which is a very big mistake that we made that we're still trying to fix, is to make sure you get a credit card backup for those members that are doing ACH. And we ran into this issue with our new members that were coming in with ACH and no backup, and like trying to track them down to get the money to come into the account if they have a NSF or keep having NSF. So it's been really challenging. So
What is NSF?
Non-sufficient funds.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I mean, it's going to keep trying their bank account, but if there's no funds in there, then you're going to get hit with some fees on your end, and you're going to have people that you're trying to track down, versus if there's a credit card backup in the system and PushPress, it'll go to the credit card backup and you don't have to deal with that.
I like that. Lesson learned for everybody listening. If you go to
Don't do that.
ACH, have a backup credit card on file. That's a great lesson learned. Thank you for that, Aimee. Chris, what are your top 2 to 3 points that someone wants to pass the fee, another gym owner, and you're like, hey, you need to do this in order for it to be successful? What do you got?
Don't survey. I've seen that in the chat. Don't survey. You just make sure you have the relationship capital built up to do these type of things, right? You shouldn't be raising rates or doing these things if you're on really shaky ground with your membership. If something big just happened, if there was some negative experience with a staff member that left or any of those things, like, you need to have really strong relationship capital to be making these decisions. That's probably part of the reason some gyms are doing this and having no pushback, and other gyms are really afraid their members are being nickel and dime. That's really dependent on the relationship you currently have, where you stand as the owner, all those things. I have a lot of layers of separation between me and the members, so they don't come to me and complain if something like that happens. They understand it's a business and things are moving in a certain direction. So a lot of that really matters. The only other thing I would say, other than Aimee's points, which are great, have a credit card backup. So we take a credit card for on-ramp, and we don't charge a fee for that because it's a one-time thing. We only charge fees on recurring payments.
Okay,
Right?
that's
So
interesting.
a really important thing for us. It's a really important distinction, is we only charge a fee on recurring payments, because those add up. People understand that. Makes it much simpler for people to understand. So on-ramps, one-time PT packages, punch cards, we don't charge a fee. We're happy to eat that one time. It's easily made up for with the amount of money we're saving on the recurring memberships.
I'll also add too that we only charge the fees on our memberships. We don't charge it on like merchandise transactions or drinks or anything like that.
So you only charge it on services, not on products, essentially, or retail. That's interesting. Cool. All right. So Chris, first off, yeah, I think James made the comment. Relationship capital. Is that trademarked? Did you learn that somewhere? I love that phrase.
I've just started throwing capital at the end of stuff, leadership capital, relationship capital, marriage capital. It just seems to work for everything.
We may have to take that one.
Yeah.
We'll
I'm
borrow
stealing
the
that. I'm
relationship capital one.
Yeah, that's great. But I mean, that's one of the most valuable concepts as gym owners that we can understand, is that we are in a business that has more relationship value, relationship capital than pretty much any other business on the planet. If you think about it, I mean, there are probably a few out there that I'm not as biased towards, but we get the opportunity to build relationships with our customers more so than doctors, typically, more so than pretty much any other profession. And if we have done it correctly, the communication should be effective. It should allow us to make these changes, pay rates, raises, the passing of the processing fee. I think a lot of gym owners are afraid. I think they fear making those announcements or making those communications. And if you're coming from a place of fear, it can definitely impact your ability to communicate effectively. So that is something that people should take into consideration when making these changes, when implementing these processes, and then communicating them to their membership. Try not to communicate from a place of, oh, I feel like I'm making a mistake. If you feel like you're making a mistake, you should probably rethink it or get more conviction. So the entire purpose of this webinar, of this roundtable, is to provide everybody that's listening, everybody that's watching, with more conviction on their decision whether they want to or don't want to pass the processing fee. That conviction will allow you to communicate a little bit more effectively. It'll allow you to retain better leadership in your business and make sure that you're always, to quote a genius, doing the right things for the right people. We always want to make sure that we are making business decisions from that standpoint. Is this going to help my gym? Is this going to help my community? Is this going to allow me to get people more fit? Right? That's what we're all trying to do here. So with that being said, Michelle, can we go to the Q&A? Do we have some questions that we want to?
Yeah, I'm going to try and bounce back and forth between what people dropped in the Q&A and then some things that I saw that came through just in the chat. There were a couple good ones there too, but quick one from both Kimberly and Shane were as far as what's the ACH fee versus credit card processing fees?
Well, that's a great question. I think it's going to vary depending on who your processor is, who you're going through. Greg, do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, you save about 2% per processing fee for ACH versus credit card. Last I checked, I believe for Stripe, it's 0.79% for ACH. I think it's 2.79 for credit card. So that would be, if you're running PushPress platform using Stripe, that would be roughly where your fees break down.
So on average, would it be fair to say that it's 50 to 70% more expensive to run businesses on a credit card than it would be through ACH, or to run revenue through that? So if I'm paying, if I'm paying $1,000 in credit card processing fees, if everybody was on ACH, it would probably only amount to 500 or less. Would it be even less than that?
Could be about that. That sounds right. Your math sounds right.
So that's significant.
Yes.
I mean, if
100%.
we're talking the difference between me getting everybody on credit card versus ACH netting me $6,000 a year. I mean, as far as being able to reinvest back into the gym, that's either some huge bonuses for my staff, that's some continuing education, that's a whole floor of barbells. Like, that's a significant amount of money that can be reinvested to then allow you to improve the service that you offer. So that's pretty cool. What else we got for questions, Michelle?
So Emily is wondering if there's a way to pass the fee on retail/products a single time. So she gave the example, we close open invoices for those every second and fourth Friday. So I wouldn't want to add a fee to every individual item, but is there a way to add the fee when closing the invoice for the invoice total as a whole?
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to understand the question. So
I'm assuming it's like, okay, you have a gym member that they buy a Celsius every day when they come in for class, right? And it goes on to, let's just say, an open invoice. At the second or the fourth Friday, whichever one, she's going to go and close that invoice. So there could be 6 total Celsiuses that were purchased. Can she just add the fee on that one total invoice at that time, rather than on each line item? I'm assuming that's what Emily meant, but correct me, Emily, if I'm wrong.
I think she put in the chat, yes, that's exactly right. I don't believe that's feasible right now. That's some granular functionality. Greg, do you have any insight onto the ability to do that?
That's definitely more of a product-driven question. I think from my understanding, initially with passing the fees, it'll be mostly membership-based, not necessarily in the product space. That could be something the team does scope in the future, however.
Chris, Aimee, do you guys do it as a blanket? Well, Chris, you said only recurring fees.
Right.
Correct? So service-based things. Aimee, do you do it as a blanket across all credit card transactions?
I want to say 90% of everything we sell is a recurring based fee anyway. So it would be almost all recurring fees. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, I think you would have to choose either one or the other. I don't think you'd be able to do it to that particular transaction if that's what Emily's asking. All right, what else, what's another question?
So Kathy's asking, can you be selective who gets passed the fee? And is the credit card and ACH fees both required to be passed if this is turned on? So for instance, I only want credit card to be passed for membership only.
That's similar, right? That's is that a similar question as to basically selecting which transactions get it passed, or am I misunderstanding?
Yeah, you'll have the granularity in the system to choose to pass on a credit card versus the ACH fee. So if you only wanted to pass on for credit cards, you would be able to do that. Yep.
Cool. Nice.
Follow-up question to that is, how does Stripe handle this? So will Stripe only calculate the percentage fee on the membership since it will be a separate line item?
So as it stands, you set the percentage. Stripe doesn't really come into play in the sense that you understand what Stripe's fee is. And Greg, Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong. You understand what Stripe's fee is, and then you set the percentage upwards up to 10%, I think is the cap. By the way, if you have 10% credit card transaction fees, send me an email and I'm going to help you out. All right.
Yeah.
But you basically set the threshold. So in theory, and this was one of the negative things about the feature that me personally, I was thinking about that would be open to abuse, is that you could set the percentage above what you're actually being charged for processing fees. So Stripe doesn't necessarily, or your credit card processor doesn't necessarily come into play. It just that revenue gets skimmed by that percentage into a different revenue bucket. And it's based off of the percentage that you set. Greg, did I answer that correctly?
This was something that actually got dropped in the chat, but I thought it was a good one. And no one may know the answer, so we may have to do a little bit of legwork. But Brian was asking, does PushPress have rules written in to protect gym owners in states where surcharging is not allowed or restricted? For example, Connecticut, Maine.
So no, PushPress will not have rules in. There's just far too many for us to keep track of. That will be on the gym owner. So it is definitely one of the things that you would want to educate yourself on, and make sure. I mean, it's pretty safe to say that most gym owners are up to snuff when it comes to their state, county, city regulations as far as like zoning and all this other stuff. Transaction fees should be right up there with what you're staying in line with. Absolutely.
Some of those states you can do a discount instead of charging a fee. And we actually built that into PushPress for ourselves too, for in the future to switch it to a discount instead of a fee. So you would just
get a discount. How'd you do that?
You can, at least in our PushPress, you can, the same way you would do a member discount. We made a 3% discount. We created it in PushPress. And then we already had a 10% discount for family memberships. So we just made a 13% discount. So we have the option to that moving forward.
There you go. I love that. Workarounds. Very cool.
Nice. Another question we got here, probably more for Aimee and Chris. What did your announcements sound like to your athletes?
Simple, straightforward. Here's what we're doing. Here's why. Here's how we feel it'll benefit you as the members. You have 60 days to let us know what you want to do, or we're just going to keep rolling as a credit card. Same for us. We told them if we didn't hear from them, it was going to continue as a credit card.
Cool. Simple. Was it via email? So like, how did you communicate that? Through text, like what? It was through an email blast to your membership base?
Email. Yep.
Yep. I think a lot of gym owners, the message is something that they could craft. Like if you're like, hey, write it down on a notebook, they'd be like, yeah, cool, no problem. This is what I want to say. How do I send it? What's the most appropriate form? Like, do I tell every member as they walk in through the door? Do I do an email blast? Do I post it on social media, or do I have my coaches tell them? There's a lot of different channels of communication, and I think gym owners get spun up on that. Chris, Aimee, do you guys have a go-to channel that makes these administrative announcements? Is it just email? Is that what you depend on?
Katie, I think she likes to use both email and text, and then she'll announce also in she'll have the coaches announcing classes, important stuff, on kind of a rhythm.
Is
So
Katie
for us,
GM? I'm like, you keep talking
yeah,
about Katie.
Katie's the GM. She's in here. So I'm saying that to, like, if I'm wrong, she'll hit me in
Oh.
the
Oh,
tell
she's
me
on
if
the
I'm wrong.
webinar. I
So,
got you.
yeah, she's in here. So, yeah, no, she'll usually send emails and texts depending on the situation. I think for something like this, like price increases, we're not texting them and bugging them about it. We shoot an email. We might say, hey, check your email, or we might announce in class, hey guys, check your email if you have any questions. You know how to find us. But for the most part, we're not going to continue poking them. Hey, did you see it? Did you see it? Did you see it? Because then you are going to create friction where there's not any.
Yep.
And we had a really high open rate on the email that we sent out. I can't remember what we made the subject line, but we made sure they knew that, hey, it wasn't one of our typical auto messages, that it was important.
Very cool. I love that. Yep. All right. What we got for another question?
Yeah, I would also say, just to piggyback on that. So that's, what Greg and I do on the success team, is working with owners to go through the process of, okay, we want to make this change or this update. How do we implement that using our PushPress products, whether it's you just have Core, maybe you have Grow. So what are the tools that you already have that you can use to implement it? What's that process going to look like? To your point, excuse me, so that the owner can feel confident when they roll it out, that they're prepared to, go through that change with their community. So that's a little success plug for you guys.
Yeah, we have, sorry, jumping in, Michelle. We have a lot of kind of very specific what should I do questions in the chat. So after our webinars, guys, we always send out a link to book a success call. That'll be with myself or Michelle or Gavin on our team. And if you have very specific niche questions about what should I do with my gym, that's a great opportunity to jump on a call with our team, and we'll help you navigate that. That's really our whole job over here. A lot of the other questions are very feature heavy questions, which are great questions. And just keep in mind, this feature will roll out tomorrow, and we'll have a ton of support and help articles to help you navigate the technical side of it. And definitely lean heavily onto your PushPress Messenger to get with our support team as well. If you have those technical questions in your core dashboard, then we can help you guys work through those as well.
I will definitely put in a plug-in for reaching out to you guys too, for what's the best way to communicate, because there are some really bad things that can happen if you text message too many people to Grow at the same time. And you don't want that bad things to happen.
Yeah, I've heard. So Grow is one of those things where if I were to open up another gym, I would very much look forward to utilizing Grow, because from my understanding of the platform, it does so much stuff that so well that I realized my life would be way easier than when it was in 2018, 2019. And I would actually look forward to those things. But there are some nuances it can be a little finicky. Grow is also one of those tools that if anybody needs help with that stuff, like Greg just said, hit us up through the messenger and contact us. Our team loves helping you guys with this, with these types of problems and issues. So to piggyback and jump onto what Greg said, if you have product related questions, go to the messenger. If you want help with your specific situation or scenario, go to the messenger. Our team loves doing this stuff. This is what we wake up in the morning for. So please lean heavily on us. With that being said, Aimee, Chris, not sure if you saw it in the chat. There was a request for you guys. I'm just gonna put it out there. If you would feel comfortable putting out the template or the letter that you use to communicate passing the processing fee to your members. If you'd be comfortable putting that letter into the Facebook community group. You don't need to answer right now. I just want to make sure that you saw that. I think we should, as a collective of gym owners, especially the PushPress community group, we can lean heavily on each other, and we should be using that Facebook group a little bit more for communications of tips and tricks. And hey, this is what I did. This is what worked for us. So if you guys are feeling it, go ahead and put that in there. Michelle, were there any other questions, or did Greg pretty much sum up all the product related stuff? And I didn't see. Did I miss something in chat?
mostly, I think Greg covered them. I'll touch on one more that Lainey or Lonnie, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing. To Chris, how do you systemize the follow-up or chasing down for cash payments? A little bit of a side note on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we just do it for upfront payments. If we did offer someone to do cash for monthly payments, we would take a credit card as a backup, and they would have 3 days. They would have the due date, and then I think we decided it was either 48 or 72-hour leeway to bring the cash in. If they don't, the credit card automatically gets charged. So there's not any chasing down. There's no questions about it. They know if they don't bring the cash in, credit card's getting charged with the credit card fee within a certain amount of hours after the due date. So real simple way to do it. Other than that, if you don't want the hassle, just take cash for upfront stuff. Cash still spends. You could still use it for lots of fun things. You can use it for parties, whatever you want to do. And no, I don't discount it.
There you go. Yeah. Don't discount. All right. I love that. Well, I think we covered a lot of good bases, and I think we did exactly what we set out to do with this roundtable, which was, like I said earlier, we want to provide all gym owners that are on this call or that are watching, we want to provide them with more conviction. We want you guys to understand the choice that you have in passing the processing fee, whether you choose to do it or you choose not to do it. But hopefully the experience of Aimee, Chris, Greg's points, myself and Michelle, we've given you guys perspective so that whatever decision you make, you're making it for the right reasons, for the right people, and you are doing it to better your business and better your community and better serve them. So I want to thank you all for jumping on and sharing this with me. Aimee, Chris, Greg, Michelle, I really appreciate your time. And we will see you guys on the next Push Start digital event. Thanks for coming out.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, guys.